Hi, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of artbyrow.com, where you can find over 200 art and drawing tutorials. Today we're going to be looking at how to draw ladybugs using artist trading cards and markers. Feel free to use whatever you want, but if you haven't ever tried artist trading cards, I think you should check them out. They're pretty handy. So let's head on over to the studio and get started. Right, we are in the studio. We're getting ready to draw some ladybugs. The first thing I like to do before I start drawing something is to do some quick warm-up sketches. This only takes a few minutes. You can even set a timer for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, or you can just sketch until you fill up your paper or until you feel like you've just kind of exhausted this exercise. So it's up to you how you want to do it. You can use any type of paper. I'm using this bigger piece of paper only because I have a box of it left over from a long time ago, from when I was doing a lot of caricature drawings. I have it. It's just a heavyweight printer paper. It's kind of big. I'm using a pen today, but you can use whatever you want. It really doesn't matter. The benefits of doing this quick sketch exercise is that it helps you to warm up. It also helps you to very quickly work through some ideas and to get some rough sketches out. If you've not drawn something before, so in this example, we're doing butterflies, or ladybugs, not butterflies. We're doing ladybugs today. So maybe you've never drawn a ladybug before. This helps you to get through the basic shapes, the basic elements, see things a little bit better. It helps you warm up, like I said earlier. And it can also help you to quickly work through some different ideas, because with anything, whether it's a ladybug or anything else, there are different ways that you can draw it. And if you go straight into your drawing, then you might come into a situation where you get into the drawing and you've put some time into it, and then you realize, you know what, this isn't really how I want to do the drawing. So let me explain a little bit what I mean about that. So in the example of the ladybug, already I have two different types of drawings here. I have the wings closed and I have the wings open. If I were to just pick a drawing and go with it, then maybe I didn't discover that there's actually a different way to draw it that maybe I would like a little bit better. Another option for doing the ladybugs is top view or side view. Do I want to draw a face on it? Do I not want to draw a face on it? Do I want it to look more realistic? Do I want it to be very simple and cartoonish? I could do a face with some big eyes and just make them look kind of cute. There are a lot of different possibilities for how to go about doing pretty much any kind of drawing. So far, I like this one. I like the wings open. So if I know that I like the wings being open, maybe I could play around with that one a little bit. But you learn some different things along the way as well. You start to see things a little bit better. You notice things that maybe you didn't notice before. With the ladybug drawing, it's pretty straightforward. There's not much to it. The section with the body and the wings is going to be bigger than the head. That's something that's fairly obvious. Whether or not you want the wings closed or open, that's just something that's a personal choice you need to decide on your own. How big do you want to make the antennas? Do you want to add some feet? Do you not want feet? These are all choices that you'll need to make on your own individually. But working through and doing these quick sketches is a really good way to work through those ideas very quickly. And right now, I think it looks like I'm about 4.5 minutes in. And that's with me talking as I'm going. So if I wasn't talking and explaining things, it would be much quicker. Also, I didn't start drawing right away. So as you can see, I can fill my paper pretty quickly. If I was just doing my quick sketches and not talking along the way. So if you've never done this before, if you've never started out your drawing sessions with some quick sketches, I encourage you to try it. Give it a try. Like I said, it's 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I could have set a timer and just limited myself. You don't want to be overly detailed. You really just want to capture the essence, so to speak, of whatever it is you're going to be drawing. Learn to see it a little bit different. Notice things you maybe didn't notice before. As I'm doing this, one of the things that I did notice is that with this one, I put more dots on there, more of these spots. And I kept them pretty much the same size. And I know I don't care for that. I like fewer dots. And I like them when they're various sizes. So some small ones, some bigger ones. I don't think I want to go with the face, with the cartoony look to it. I also know that I don't care too much for the feet. And I like the one with the wings open. So by doing this quick sketch, I know these things where I actually didn't know exactly how I wanted to draw it when I was first looking at these and going online, looking at different butterflies, looking at different drawings of butterflies. And I keep saying butterflies, goodness, ladybugs. When I was looking at the ladybugs online and trying to get an idea of what I liked and what I thought looked cute, I didn't really know. I didn't have it nailed down. So this is a really great exercise to get that nailed down. Discover what you like, what you don't like. I kind of like this one. I like the one with the face a little bit, but I think I like the more realistic one a little bit better. So I feel like that's probably what I want to go with for my drawing. And I have that figured out now, and that's what I'm going to move forward with. The next thing I want to talk to you about is artist trading cards real quick. So we have our rough sketch. That's usually the first thing I do in my process. I do a lot of my drawings on artist trading cards, which are cut from larger pieces of like a heavy cardstock. I like using the cardstock because I use markers most of the time in my drawings, and the cardstock works really well for using markers. And I can take a piece of cardstock and cut it down into artist trading cards, and I get 10 artist trading cards from every sheet of paper. And then once I do that, I use this paper punch to round off the corners so that I have rounded off corners instead of the square edges. That's a personal preference. That's just something I like to do. And I often use this toned paper. I really like how the drawings look on it. It makes the colors look a little bit different. It just gives a little bit different feel to it. So today I'm going to be drawing my ladybug on artist trading cards. You can do yours on whatever you want, whether that's a full sheet of paper, a sketchbook, scrap paper, it doesn't really matter. One of the things I do like about the artist trading cards is they make binder pages that you can put the cards in the sleeves, and then it makes it's kind of like a portfolio of your artwork. And then eventually I'll end up trading them to other artists. So you could either keep them, you can trade them. And the way artist trading cards work is that there's groups online in Facebook and then just like standalone forums. You trade them for other artists' artwork. So I could do my Ladybug drawings, I post pictures of them. If somebody is interested in getting one of my cards, then they post what they have available. I pick something from their collection, and then we swap them. You send them in the mail, and you collect other people's artwork. So it's a lot of fun. Artist trading cards, if you haven't looked into them before, if you're not familiar. And all they are is they're 3.5 inches by 2.5 inches. And that's really the only rule, is that they need to be 2.5 by 3.5. Craftsmanship matters. They need to be your best work. You don't want anything sloppy. You don't want your cards to be all crooked and not the right size. You want to take pride in what you do. But other than that, there aren't any rules. You don't want them to be too thick because they should fit in those sleeves. So that's it for the artist trading cards. So let's go ahead and get started on doing some Ladybug drawings. So first thing I do is I grab my pencil that I like drawing with. I have my artist trading card handy. Another thing that's good about artist trading cards is they really save a lot of time. I have my eraser that I love. I love the size of it. It gets into small spots, but it's not so small that it takes forever if I need to erase something. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Try not to shake the camera too much. So for my Ladybug drawing, as I said earlier, I like it with the wings open, so that's what we're going to work on today. And the first thing I want to do is start with some basic shapes. The nice thing about starting with basic shapes is that, for one thing, the first thing it does is it helps you to get over that staring at the blank piece of paper and making that first mark. Sometimes getting started with the first mark is the absolute hardest part of a drawing. So by starting out with some basic shapes, right away we don't have our blank paper anymore. It also helps get the basic structure of whatever you're drawing down. It helps me with the placement. It helps me with the size. And even though I don't think it's super critical that everything fits on your paper, sometimes it looks kind of cool to have it go off the edges. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't ever feel like your artwork is ruined if you go off the edge of your paper. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. It's definitely not the end of the world. So I'm visualizing where that center point is. I want to make my Ladybug fairly symmetrical. Again, I'm not going to be overly critical or to worry too much about it. And I want these lines of the wings to curve. I don't want them to be straight. I want them to curve this way, and I want them to curve this way. And I'm drawing a little bit darker than what I normally would to try to help it pick up on the camera. But you can draw your basic shapes that you draw. You'd probably want to draw them a little lighter so they're easier to erase and get rid of. We're going to be coloring in the wings anyway, so it's not a huge deal, but usually I'll draw my basic shapes much lighter than this. And then, as you can see, I'm just drawing right over top and ignoring it. I'm only using it just as a reference. So I have my two wings. They're open. They're mostly symmetrical. It's really hard to get things completely symmetrical unless that's just something your eyes and your brain are good at figuring out. But you want it to look basically symmetrical. And then what I did was at the bottom of the body is make that come down to a little bit more of a point. And you don't necessarily have to do that. You could keep yours more rounded if you wanted to. Now I'm going to define the shape of the head. You can decide what shape you want it to be, how big you want it to be. Maybe you want to make it a little bit smaller. And then the last thing is to add in the antennas. And they have a little ball on the end of it. And these you can make symmetrical or not. They're not always going to be in the exact same location as one another. I'm going to make them a little bit wider where they connect to the head. So there's my basic drawing of my ladybug, which for some reason I keep wanting to say butterfly. I'm not sure what's going on with that today. So I'm going to put my spots on here. And as I mentioned earlier on the quick sketch, I know from doing that exercise that I like fewer spots. And I like some of them to be a little bit smaller and some to be bigger. So that's how I'm going to draw them on there. Another thing you can do when you're doing your drawings to make them look a little bit more interesting is to do these spots coming off the edge here so it looks like it curves around. Because these spots would continue and wrap around that edge of the wing. Okay, so that's it for the drawing itself. The next thing is to do the outline. When you're doing your outline, you can use whatever you want. There's these fine point or ultra fine point, it says, Sharpies, which I typically don't use, mostly because I don't like the odor from them. The odor's a little bit too strong. I'll use these Sharpie pens quite a bit. And if you're using markers, you want to do your outline with something permanent. And then there's also these brush pens that are really nice for getting thick and thin lines. I used to use brush pens almost exclusively years ago when, back when I was doing a lot more caricatures and graffiti work. I use the brush pens a lot. They do take a little bit of getting used to. They're a little bit harder to control until you get used to them. So this is something that's on my list of things I want to work on and develop my skills a little bit. But a lot of times I use this Sharpie pen. So one thing you can do before you do your outlining, if you need to, is you could go in here and erase some of these lines if it's going to get a little bit confusing when you're doing it. Sometimes what happens is when you start doing your outlining, you forget what you're doing. You're not completely paying attention. You just get in this rhythm of outlining everything, and you might go over some lines that you didn't want to keep. Those basic structure lines that we put down when we first started. So all you're going to do is just trace right over top of the pencil lines you want to keep. And you could do this with a bigger marker. You could do like you could use a regular Sharpie or Bic marker if you wanted. Completely up to you, and very, very much it's a personal preference, which is going to be determined by your style, your artistic style. And if you don't know what your artistic style is, don't worry about it too much. That really just means that you need to practice a little bit more. And as you practice, you'll discover what you like, what you don't like. And all of those things work together to create whatever your personal style is. And that can be anything from things like, I like these spots to be bigger. Maybe you like smaller ones and they have a bunch of them on there. All those things come together for your personal style. And when you're creating your artwork is going to be very unique to you and very different from everybody else's, because only you can create your artwork the way you create it. Even if you're trying to mimic what somebody else does or copy their drawings or their art, you're not going to be able to do it exactly, because you're going to do things a little bit differently than what they do. And what I'm doing now is just thickening up these lines a little bit. And I'm thinking about where there's going to be some shadows. And this is where the brush pen comes in and makes it really nice, if you're comfortable using one, is that I could do this with the brush pen in one move. I could make this thicker than that. But like I said earlier, you have to be able to control that. And I haven't used one in a little bit, so I'm definitely out of practice. But there's the outline. The next thing you need to do is to erase your pencil lines before adding the color. And you can use any type of eraser you want, whether it's a pink pearl eraser. This eraser is the one I've been using more often. And to be honest, I don't even know where it came from. What I don't like about the pink pearl erasers is that you get these smudges on there, and sometimes they transfer onto your drawing. So you have to clean them every now and then. This black one that I've been using, it kind of crumbles apart when you use it, and it makes a kind of a pretty big mess. Which, that part of it's annoying, but it's self-cleaning, so as you're using it, the part you just used crumbles off, and you don't have the problem of the smudges being left behind, which is really nice. So, got this all cleaned up. Once I get rid of all those extra pencil lines, I can go in and add some color. And you don't have to remove every single pencil line. The markers will cover a lot of it up, or your colored pencils or whatever you're using. Another thing you need to look at after you go in with your eraser, you might find some areas that need touched up with your outline. And this is a good time to go in and touch those up. Okay, when you're picking out your colors, one thing, especially if you're using markers, I like to use multiple shades of the color and then blend them together. So what I do is take these scrap pieces that are left over from when I cut out my artist trading cards. I take that and I'll just add a little bit of color on here to see how they blend together and how the colors look next to each other. The way I work on my drawings, and again, this is part of my artistic style, is that I like to use at least 2 colors for each area, and sometimes 3. So what I'm doing with the head, which would be an area that's basically is black, but I don't want it to look flat, so I don't want to just use a solid black. So what I'm doing is adding in some different grays, and they're pretty dark as far as gray goes. They're not quite black, but they're almost black. They're pretty dark. And this will help create a little bit of depth in the drawing so that it's not just completely flat. And then this marker is a black marker. And then I'm just going to go back in, blend that in a little bit. And then the last thing I want to do is go over it with my lightest color, and that'll help blend everything in. You can also use colorless blenders, which I have, but I normally don't use them. I just go back over it with the lighter color markers. The only bad thing about doing that, but most of the time it's really not a problem, when you go back over your markers and layer them, it'll make the marker darker. So each time you go back over top of it again, you're darkening that area up. So you would want to use the colorless blender if that's going to affect your drawing, but the types of drawings I do, it's not going to hurt anything. And this is just a little bit of a quicker way for me to work. Because it's one less marker to have to grab. So I think the camera picks this up pretty well. You can see where it's not a solid black. Now for the spots, you could use just a solid black, or you could do the same type of process. You could also use a gray that's much lighter than what I'm using. That's completely up to you. Again, that's just one of those things that it's part of your style, what kind of look you're going for. Or maybe you don't want to use the grays at all. Maybe you want yours to have that flatter look to it and just a solid color, and that's okay too. That would be your preference, and that would be something that's part of your style. So you should always do whatever looks and feels right to you. Whatever fits with your style and whatever it is you're going for. I would say don't let anybody else tell you what your artwork should or shouldn't look like. And if you're using markers and you want to blend your colors together, you need to make sure you're working in small sections at a time. And the reason for that is that you want your markers to stay wet if you want to be able to blend the colors together and smooth out those transitions a little bit. If you let your markers dry out and then go back over them, they're going to look different. And another thing to keep in mind is that layering your colors will make them look different than if you just put them side by side. So I don't know if you noticed or not, but I filled in these entire sections with, I started with my light gray and then went with the darker gray and then with the black. But I filled in the whole area with my lightest color, even though I knew that a lot of it was going to get covered up. If I would have started with the dark and then filled in with the lighter gray, these colors come out a little bit different. And I like starting out with the lighter color first, because then you're not limited to where you can color in and where you're going to put your lights. You can make those decisions as you go, where if you do the dark color first, you're basically going to be locked in to that area and you're not going to have any room to adjust as you're working. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And that's entirely up to you how you like to work. Again, very much a personal preference. So I'm going to pick out my reds. And I want to do the same thing. The red is a little bit tougher because there aren't as many markers, where the grays, there's 20 different shades of it. So it's really easy to get different variations of gray. The red's a little bit tougher. There aren't as many, or at least there's more out there, but I don't have as many different variations of red. And I'm using these Shinhan touch markers. I really like them. I've had them for a long time. They have the fine point, and then they have the bigger chisel point, which is nice for larger areas. So what you want to do is pick out your different reds that you're going to use. And you could use pink if you wanted to use pink. You could do something that's a lot lighter if you wanted to go much lighter. That's really up to you and how you want to work. But again, get some variation in there. It'll help your drawings look a little bit less flat. It'll make them look a little bit more interesting. And of course, as I said earlier, if you want your markers to look more flat, if you want your overall drawing to look a little bit flatter, then you can do it all with one color when you're filling in and just use one marker. That's your preference. If you want something that looks a little bit flatter, then by all means do that. Don't let me tell you how your artwork should be created. I'm showing you one way to do it, but of course there's lots of different ways, lots of different techniques you can use. And there is my colored ladybug. I see there's a spot right here that got missed right along the edge. Sometimes the edges don't get filled in all the way because of trying to not go outside of the outline. If that happens, just grab your marker, go back in, touch it up. So that's it for the ladybug itself. Then you can go in with a white Jelly Roll pen. These work really, really well over top of markers. They work great for adding in these little highlights. They're nice and bright. So you can go in, just add a little bit of white here and there to kind of break it up a little bit. You could add some on the red if you wanted to. Again, this is all personal preference. What fits with your style, what do you like, what you don't like. If you don't like the white, you don't have to add it. It's entirely up to you. The only thing left to do is just to finish it up with whatever you want to do on the background. What I do a lot of times is to just take a bright colored marker and to add this little line around the edge. I usually call it a halo. And you can make this thinner or thicker, or you could add some plants or flowers to the background. Add a little scene, maybe have it sitting on top of a leaf. There's a lot of different options for creating your backgrounds. So again, you should do whatever you like, whatever you think looks good. You might look at this outline around there and completely hate it and not want to do anything like that, and that's completely understandable. It adds a little something to it. Sometimes I'll put a border around the outside edge as well. A little indication of maybe a leaf or something on there would look nice. But if I want to call that done, I think it's far enough along. I think it looks okay. Another thing that I really like about the artist trading cards is one thing you can do is what I call the 7-day challenge, where you would do 7 ladybugs in 7 days. And what that does is it helps you to push your creativity. And it also helps you to discover new things and to try new things and experiment a little bit. So I think it's a great idea to do multiple drawings. The artist trading cards really save time. They make it a lot easier to get more done in a shorter amount of time. So if I was going to do 7 of these, my next one, I'm not going to do the same way. I would definitely try adding some kind of background. I don't know that I feel like doing that on this one necessarily, but definitely if I was going to do more, I would work on the backgrounds a little bit more. I would work on different ways of coloring it a little bit and just experimenting a lot more than if I'm just doing one single drawing. So I hope you guys found this helpful. If you did, if you can give us a like, subscribe so you can see more in the future and get notified, that helps us grow. And I will see you soon. Have a great day and happy creating. Well, that's it for today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button for us. And if you want to see more, hit subscribe and you'll get notified every time a new video gets released. Happy creating!